Is this, I don't want to say necessarily standardization, but let's say coalescing towards some kind of average or like frequent use of language? Um, does this, is this what kind of makes things like large language models and AI so capable of I guess just acting like humans of approximating language really? I guess in general, could you just say more maybe about how you feel about AI and large language models as well?
Yeah, I think you're probably right that uh, it's a sort of a very strong yes and no, I think, in this case. So I think, yes, in that frequency will get you a long way. So, the way that we generally understand how large language models work is that I mean, they're not just, it's not, frequency is not the right word to be accurate. It's more probability.
Hmm.
The frequency is closely related to probability. So, I guess probability is some kind of a measure of frequency given a context. So, humans are smart and we can track lots of different things at the same time. Um, so, you know, going back to what we were just discussing, it's certainly important for us to have a sense of what is the usual, most frequent way of saying something. So this is an important principle that was discovered quite a while ago, often attributed to uh, the philosopher Grice, who said, look, when people say things, among the various things he said is that you just try to say the thing in the way that everyone normally says it. Stick to the standard way of speaking, because if you don't, so an example might be something like, he started the car, um, started the car. It's just a regular way of saying that he turned the car ignition on, I suppose. But if you say instead, you know, he turned the key and then the ignition came on, or something like he got the car to start. Those are less frequent ways of describing this very common event. And so his argument was when a speaker chooses a less frequent, less usual way of speaking, they're going to be implying something that means it's not a usual situation. So maybe the person was having trouble starting the car, and then you might say, well, he got it to start. Maybe it was too cold or what have you.
Mm.
So I'm talking about that because there's something very fundamental about our ability to track as users of language what are the usual ways of speaking and what are the kind of departures from that. So when people speak in an unexpected way, then our sort of, you know, slow thinking kicks in, our sort of system two thinking kicks in, and we think, well, why are they putting it in that kind of unusual way? So we are sensitive to frequency effects. We're sensitive to probabilities. But so that's the yes part. The no part is that we then, we have minds and we have, these models where we're trying to think about how what people say makes sense in terms of you know, their goals, their beliefs. There's a sort of a whole intuitive psychology that we apply when we're trying to interpret how people talk. And so we're combining, I think it's clear that humans are combining, kind of applying our cognition and our minds to interpretation together with um, just sort of brute facts about what we know about our language, like what are the relative frequencies of words and so on. So, with AI or large language models specifically, uh, it's very complicated what goes on under the hood, and that's not my field. But in
Sure.
terms of how they create what they create, one piece of it that plays an important role is this sense of what's most likely to occur next in a given kind of context. So it produces, given the amount of data that they're fed on, produces incredible outputs that seem very natural to us and make a lot of sense. And they do have these limitations and these problems, but they're obviously incredibly impressive. Um, you asked me, what do I think kind of generally? Well, it's funny because I don't really think anything. I mean, they are what they are. I don't think that they're sort of inherently good or bad. I think that they're definitely changing uh, how they will change how we kind of consume information, because more and more, I think it's a little bit easier to see in the visual domain. So more and more uh, visual images can be created by AI. And I mean, today, I think there's a lot of images that look like a photograph that I see online that
Yeah.
are AI, and I don't even realize it. But a lot of them, you can see, and I don't think they're hiding that fact. I walked down the street the other day in Sydney and walked past a Japanese restaurant, noodle restaurant, and the big signs, nice pictures of people eating noodles, and this lady had, 6 fingers, and I thought, look at that. It's that they're using AI to do. They don't have to get models to come and do photo shoots and stuff anymore.
Right.
Um, so it's changing everything, but I think what it's going to change is something about the kind of our epistemic vigilance, our epistemic kind of stance to what we hear and see. And I think it's just going to change the baseline for us, that more and more we're going to see images, and the default is going to be, I don't know if this is real or not. I feel for myself anyway, it's really beginning to kind of, change in that way. But it won't change with human beings that we're standing across from. We're not going to be going, oh, is this a real person or not?
Right.
Whereas that I think is really we're facing a kind of tipping point right now, where images people see online just that nobody will assume that it's real until they somehow have a good kind of confirmation of that, which is right, which is as it should be, right? So I feel like it's actually that would be a good outcome, because probably it's lagging far behind. That would have been a good stance to have already for a few decades.
Right. Yeah.
It is, well, I'm just not going to believe this thing that I'm reading online or even in newspapers until I really have to. So, I mean, I sort of gone a little bit off tangent here, but
No, it's good.
I feel like it's important, in terms of our sort of epistemic practices around encountering communicative acts. And, language is traditionally very much anchored to real people who we have real relationships with, who are standing in front of us. I mean, that's the ancestral kind of setting in which it was evolved. And now we're grappling with this very, very rapidly changing world, which is not just large language models. It's electronic media, a nanosecond before that, and then
Yeah.
writing a nanosecond before that, or printing rather, and then writing. So these are all very recent developments and changing the life of language pretty radically. And I guess those are issues for another whole conversation.